Welcome to Mayank Chhaya Reports. I'm Mayank Chhaya. Today is October 11th, 2022, which marks the 80th birthday of the superstar Amitabh Bachchan. A lot of what a journalist writes as anecdotes from one's professional life is mostly taken on faith by the reader. I have had my fair share of those over the past 4 decades that I've been a journalist. If celebrities figure in the telling of many of these little nuggets, it's because that way the reader finds it easier to identify with the anecdotes. In my personal interactions, I often tell people about an event from 1982 when Amitabh Bachchan suffered a near fatal injury during the shooting of the movie Coolie by Manmohan Desai in Bangalore. My story, of course, is peripheral to the main story about how hundreds of millions of Indians rallied around Bachchan during his time of crisis and equally revealed how some people's lives and well-being seem to matter much more than most. It wasn't as if that year millions of others did not suffer from serious health problems, or many of them did not succumb to them. But Bachchan's struggle for survival resonated across the country simply because of who he is, an icon in whose fortunes people have invested their own hopes. There were prayers offered in shrines across the country for his speedy recovery, and people followed the progress of his surgery at the Breach Candy Hospital in Mumbai and subsequent convalescence at his home with unflagging interest. In those pre-internet, pre-Facebook, pre-Twitter, pre-Instagram, pre-everything days, newspapers were the only source of information. That I worked for one in Bombay, the Free Press Journal, and lived not too far from him put me in the middle of the story. Among millions who found their own ways to join in the sort of a national Get Well Amitabh Bachchan movement was a resident of the city of Vadodara in Gujarat. His name is Arvind Pandya, and he did something absolutely remarkable. He ran backwards nearly 500 kilometers from Vadodara to Mumbai as a gesture to ensure that Bachchan gets well soon. My colleague, the photographer Gopal Shetty, and I were the only people from the press at Bachchan's bungalow Pratiksha that morning, and during that interaction, Gopal shot a photograph which went on to become rather famous. On Bachchan's 80th birthday, I'm keen to talk with Gopal about what he remembers of that day and what I remember. So here it is, Gopal Shetty and I. Thank you. Essentially, what I want to do is reminisce about that particular morning when you and I were, trust me, you and I were the only journalists that day. I know it for 100% fact.
Acha, okay.
Yeah. So anyway, that's not the relevant part. The relevant part is the photograph. So let me start with what I remember and tell me what you remember. I'll say a bit about the morning. I think it was perhaps sometime September or in that time phase of 1982 after Bachchan was discharged from
Yeah.
the Breach Candy Hospital.
Yes, a few days after he left off Breach Candy,
Right.
after he was discharged from Breach Candy.
Right. And I remember before that you were at the Breach Candy Hospital when Indira Gandhi visited.
Oh, Breach
Right.
Candy mein to, right from the day he was brought, till he was discharged, I had to visit Breach Candy almost daily. वो free press का duty था उस वक्त शायद. And so many film stars, VIPs, of course, VIPs, so right from Mrs. Gandhi, Rajiv Gandhi, Sonia Gandhi, all chief ministers, Congress bigwigs, social bigwigs, business वाले society के बड़े बड़े लोग वो आते ही रहते थे. Of course, I am told nobody was allowed to see him. They just used to visit and mark their presence, I suppose.
What do you
Except
remember of
Mrs.
Indira Gandhi?
Yeah, yeah, I remember. In fact, I remember Rajiv Gandhi's very well. Rajiv Gandhi came in the midnight,
I
and
see.
I accompanied Murli Devra, Babasaheb Bhosle, and that our friend Chandrasekhar Prabhu, no, MLA. He
Yeah,
too, during the night. And in fact, we were the only. I was the only guy from the press during the night. Next day, again he visited when the entire press went to cover him, Rajiv Gandhi. Rajiv
I see.
Gandhi, in fact, I think he came from United States straight away, cutting short his visit.
True.
And after that, Mrs. Gandhi came. Mrs. Gandhi came along with Sonia Gandhi and I think Amitabh's mother, Teji Bachchan, and the director of the hospital, welcomed them.
I
On
see.
that day, of course, entire press was there.
Yeah. It's fascinating when I look back on that particular period. The amount of absolute reverential worship that happened in aid of Amitabh Bachchan's recovery. I
Hmm.
don't think it has ever happened after that for anyone.
Hmm. No, no, I don't think. In fact, I'm so shocked. Entire India was praying for him. If you remember,
I do.
everywhere, temples, mosques, gurdwaras, churches, there were prayers for his recovery. And I'm so shocked, the kind of love and affection people had for him. Great adulation. And
No,
this thing
but
has not happened for any, even VIPs, I suppose.
it's interesting. It
Prayer.
hasn't. It hasn't happened for even for him after that.
After that, उस वक्त
Not
तो
that,
था,
no,
I
not that
think.
he has fallen sick. I'm saying generally in terms of the kind of reverence that he inspired in that phase was astonishing.
Astonishing, unbelievable. In fact, throughout that stay in Bridge Candy, we would read, people from various places, various Chandigarh ho, ya Delhi ho, ya Lucknow ho, Bangalore, people praying for his recovery. This is un, I mean, incredible. The love which people of India had for him is just unbelievable.
Right.
Great.
Uh, Now, for the sake of my viewers, I would want them to know that Gopal Shetty and I go back a very long way. In fact, he
Yes,
started his career a little before me, but I would call him my contemporary and among the dearest friends. And
absolutely.
we did a lot of assignments together. But today's purpose is that morning, sometime in August September timeframe in 1982, when a gentleman ran backwards from the city of Baroda, which is Vadodara now.
Hmm.
His rationale was that if you run backwards, you're essentially reversing the time to a point where Bachchan was healthy. Think of it like in computer parlance, it was like restoring, it was the restore point. And his belief was that if he runs backwards, Amitabh Bachchan will become better. So Gopal and I were the only press people at Pratiksha that morning. I was 21. Amitabh Bachchan was 40 then. Gopal was, of course, just 18.
What is
I'm kidding.
in
Gopal's
next?
age we will not reveal because he doesn't want it revealed.
No, no, no. Age.
No. Gopal was 12 years older than me at that point, but he was already a veteran photographer. My memory of the morning is we go to this Pratiksha, Amitabh Bachchan's sprawling bungalow. In those days, think about 1982, even though he was an absolute superstar then, entering the bungalow was not even nearly as difficult as it has become since. I showed my press credentials. Gopal and I were working for the Free Press Journal. Gopal came a little after me because I lived nearby and I reached earlier. And when I entered, to my greatly pleasant surprise, I found Dr. Harivansh Bachchan, Amitabh Bachchan's father. He was pacing up and down in the forecourt of the bungalow, and I introduced myself. He greeted me very warmly, and we started chatting. And suddenly, that gentleman had not still arrived from Baroda, and Gopal was still expected. So I'm talking to him about this, that, and the other, especially concerning his son. And suddenly, Dr. Bachchan welled up. I could see tears in his eyes. So I understood why, but I wanted to know why he was being emotional. And he said, when I think about the kind of prayers and the response and the affections that my son has got during this tragic accident, I just cannot put my mind around it. It's something that I can never understand, never comprehend. That's what he told me. That's when Gopal came. So, Gopal, when you arrived, what was the scene?
In fact, you gave me the information, this particular information you gave me. I came in the morning, but what struck me is in this kind of wow he has taken. This is incredible, walking backwards from Baroda to Bombay. Those days, Bombay, now Mumbai, 550 kilometers. It's a Herculean task. It's not for everybody. I don't know. This guy is made up of strong mental strength to walk back all the way, and that too, if you remember, he postponed his marriage for this sake, to fulfill the vow. He had
Indeed.
taken a vow, if Amitabh becomes totally fit, I will run backwards all the way from Baroda to Siddhivinayak. To
Right.
fulfill that vow, it requires tremendous courage, what kind of, then you can imagine the kind of fans Amitabh has.
Yeah.
What length they go to, uh, I mean, their hero worship, it is almost.
Right. Do you remember his name? Unfortunately,
Yeah,
I
Arvind Pandya. In fact, I read about him after uh, in between. I used to read. He in fact had become a marathoner. I'm told he participated in several marathons in India and abroad, also in New York.
but the interesting part is what he ran backwards was any time greater than any marathon he could have run.
Running backwards is not a joke. That too,
Running
I
is not
I
a,
don't know how many days he has taken to reach Mumbai.
I know, but running is not a joke to begin with, that distance.
Even backwards in that traffic and such a difficult. I mean, those days, of course, Gujarat roads were, I'm told, good those days also. But roads when you enter Maharashtra were not that good. And
No,
traffic, highway traffic, trucks, lorries, and whatnot, it's not easy to fulfill such a. I don't know how people can take such difficult vows to,
and then
which is ordinary people
for
like.
one man, yeah, even if he's a
Uh,
superstar.
which shows the kind of adulation and love Mr. Bachchan has for,
Exactly.
people have for Mr. Bachchan.
Yeah. Interesting.
Unbelievable hero
Yeah,
worship.
it is. In fact, when he reached, you and I were, of course, waiting for Mr. Pandya to arrive.
Hmm.
Uh, I remember Mr. Bachchan, that is Amitabh Bachchan I'm talking about.
Hmm.
He came out shortly after that to greet him. And he had this pretty distinguished looking robe that he was wearing. But I had not seen him in person before that. I, of course,
Sure.
knew him as an actor. This was my
Uh-huh.
first face to face.
Uh,
And I have a very visual conception about everything in life. So when I saw his face, I was quite taken aback how gaunt and almost, uh, it had ashen faced look to it.
in fact, what I make out from his expression, that particular expression when he met this man, he must be wondering how people can take such a
Right.
great, difficult task for him. I think Amitabh's faith in the people's prayer,
Yeah.
to make him okay, he is now totally confirmed. If you remember, every Saturday now at this age also, he Saturday or Sunday he meets his fan. Thousands of people come to his house to
Right.
Jalsa, and he
Right.
makes it a point to wave to them,
Yeah.
which is just unbelievable. And this at this age.
Right.
And another thing is at this stage he commands such, he is not like other actors who has retired. How he has I don't know from where he gets such strength and stamina
Right.
despite so many injuries and so many health problems.
The irony, Gopal, is
Uh,
that when we met him, I mean, when we saw him that day, he
uh,
was 40 years old, and it was almost as if he was not going to make to his 41st year after the accident.
mm,
And here we are, 40 years down the line,
Mm.
reminiscing about his career in that particular day. Now let me come to that photograph because you were taking a lot of pictures and I was just chatting away with Dr. Bachchan.
Mm.
I was told that Amitabh Bachchan may not be in a position to converse, so I didn't really ask him anything other than just watching him. What do you remember when you started taking photographs then?
At that time, of course, for me also, just now you said Amitabh Bachchan may not, or no, that 40 years gap, whatever you said. During the time he spent in the hospital, at that time also, there was constant reports, Amitabh Bachchan is recovering. And very next day, Amitabh setback in his health. And this was continuously going on. Setback and hope for, him. And ultimately, of course, he triumphed over everything. That's his great uh, mental strength or whatever. But almost on a daily basis, with for a few days, you will say Amitabh is recovering. Of course, there would be a good news for all his fans. But again, suddenly, he's there is a severe setback to his health,
Right.
and again progressing. All this was going on for several days.
And
No,
I remember he was swinging between life
how
and
he
death.
and his recovery there for that matter is just fantastic, unbelievable.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
no, so obviously I remember the day very well, and I even wrote about it in one of my pieces much
Uh,
later, several years, maybe over 1.5 decades later. It's interesting. After you read that piece, you sent me the now famous picture. I didn't know you had taken a photograph which had me
yes,
in the
yes.
frame.
Yeah, even
Uh,
I was not aware. I had forgotten about that. We when we give photographs to the paper, we cut out the unwanted
Correct.
part.
And
You
I
have
was
included
unwanted
that.
for sure.
And another thing, after he recovered, when he started shooting again for
Yeah,
Coolie, that was the he was totally, एकदम fit लग रहा था यार. ऐसा लग रहा था पूछो मत for the first time. And
yeah,
this Amitabh Bachchan is totally different from the earlier Amitabh Bachchan. Earlier, he
right,
was known as an angry man. He had some issues with the press. He
right.
was not very, forthcoming with the press. But here, the press was there in the strength. He was very good to the press, and he looked totally very dapper. And he reenacted the same shot which had, given him
Yeah,
almost such serious injury. And I remember Manmohan Desai took the clap. God bless Coolie returns, something like that.
right.
And उसमें तो पूछो मत, Navy
No,
band was
it
there,
was. I
and
don't think people of this
उसमें तो
generation
हमको ऐसा
can.
लग रहा था कि he has not gone through such serious,
True,
injury.
true. No, but absolutely. And I was thinking that people of this generation,
Mm.
especially those who were born in the last 20 years or so, would have a problem wrapping their heads around the kind of absolutely insane visceral fame that he saw then. He continues to enjoy it, perhaps not to that degree anymore, but that's understandable. You know, I come back to the photograph. After you send me that picture, uh, suddenly, I think maybe a couple of years or maybe 3 years later, I got another screenshot from a nephew of mine, Tapan
Mm.
Vaidya. He said this picture was featured in Kaun Banega Crorepati as
Mm.
one of
Yes.
the questions. And I was very pleasantly surprised that he took up that picture and asked, what do you remember of that?
Uh, that particular picture, it's one of my good pictures in my collection. The
Right.
very good pictures. And in fact, I spoke to Mr. Bachchan about this when my wife's book was, his book was released by him. He just smiled at
Right.
me. I reminded him about that photograph. Of course, more than the photograph, the man in the photograph, whose kind of adulation he had for Amitabh Bachchan, and he takes 550 kilometers running backwards. That is the main thing,
Yeah.
it even now, it is very difficult for me to think, somebody can do this kind of vow, a vrat. What is it called? Pratigya.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, it was.
For
It was a
somebody,
wow, sure.
ये लोग अपने आइडल के लिए क्या क्या करते हैं.
Yeah, I mean it almost godlike status that
Another
he.
thing I remember in the hospital, if you remember, there was some film producers and people connected with Amitabh. They were there regularly. Amitabh, Manmohan Desai and his son. Yash Chopra was almost every other day. Rishi Kapoor was there. Amjad Khan was there. And Prakash Mehra, Chandra Barot. So many, I mean, real industry was affected by his injury at that time. And
Because
shootings
he
were
was,
not
yeah,
happening at that time, I'm told.
hey, he was at the very core of the industry at that
Uh,
point.
and I
Soon
remember
after Rajesh
newspaper.
Khanna.
Yes, I remember newspapers carrying, several crores were riding on him and
Even then,
industry.
yes, yes,
Uh,
that's true. No,
but
coming back to that particular morning.
uh,
I mean, like I said, I was 21. I had
you
obviously
were
seen
21,
many
and
of his films.
possibly
I'd
that,
seen. Sorry, go ahead.
possibly that, I'm sorry, possibly that guy who ran backwards must be 20, must have been 20. अब मुझे लगता
Indeed.
है अभी he must be around 60.
Right. No, the
Uh,
point I was making was one had grown up watching his films, and here I am face to face with him. Maybe it says something about the way my mind works. I had zero reaction to be in the presence of a superstar of that scale. To me, it was like another person and another story. But when I look back, it strikes me that the kind of almost lunatic frenzy that he generated and continues to do so. I'm very fascinated by that fame aspect of his life. I met him a couple of times after that for two major interviews,
mhm.
and I asked him about the chemistry of fame. And in his typical, almost choreographed modesty, he didn't quite tell me what he felt because I'm sure he had no particular answer to why he's so famous and what he how he navigates it. But when I look back at that morning, it tells me that it's something that you cannot really explain. It's just there.
Amitabh is really a phenomenon. Even at this age, he commands such name, fame, respect, which no film actor or that matter, even in other fields, you
Yeah,
don't come across anybody in 80s. And he's so active. I don't know from where he gets energy.
yeah. And interesting because in between then he had a problem of myasthenia gravis,
Mm.
uh, which again was seen as potentially life-threatening. And at that point, a lot of people thought that his career had ended because it stopped his muscle movements. I remember there was a talk about how if he started combing his hair,
Mm.
and in the middle of combing, myasthenia gravis acted up. Essentially, his hand would just freeze, and it will have to be brought down with some help. From there to now, as today, when I say today, we are recording it on the 10th, but in the interest of accuracy, on October 11th, when they celebrate his 80th birthday, I wonder whether any of these will go through his mind.
Beg your pardon?
Now, I wonder whether any of these things will go through his mind.
Yeah, yeah.
Myasthenia gravis and all kinds of other problems that he's gone through.
And after that, KBC has become such an hit. It's
Yeah,
I don't think any other program has got so much TV rating continuously over the period. So many
right,
years,
right.
and you can see the kind of love people have for him in that program
Yeah.
only. What all they do before coming, what all they have dreamt about him. पूछो मत उन लोगों ने क्या क्या उसके लिए किया है.
बिल्कुल, बिल्कुल। अच्छा गोपाल मुझे ये बताओ to go back to Breach Candy Hospital,
हाँ.
what do you remember of Rajiv Gandhi's visit? Do you have little more or even Indira Gandhi's? Because Indira Gandhi coming down was a huge deal.
That shows those days, Amitabh was very close to Gandhi family. I think nearest, and in fact,
Right.
Rajiv was very much concerned. Even Indira Gandhi was very much concerned. So much. it's only later on उनका
Yeah.
family में जो भी दूरी आ
With a
गया है,
falling
maybe
out, yeah.
because of Amar Singh. In fact, I remember when he was very close to SP
Hmm.
family or SP के leadership, Amar Singh. There were a lot of criticism and lot of, I won't say abuses, very severe criticism of Amitabh by the Congress people. But
Right.
that man, never reacted in any other manner. He just said at once, I remember, वो तो राजा है हम रंक है. Whereas
Yeah.
his wife is outspoken, she fights with even Congress, she criticizes, she takes, he is totally opposed to what is the wife's
Yeah.
temperament, I think.
No, I understand, but I think
And he and
that
doesn't take पंगा with anybody, any party, शिवसेना हो, बीजेपी हो, कांग्रेस हो.
no, I understand. I mean, it maybe that's his temperament, but that construct, "wo raja hai, hum praja hai,"
हाँ,
I found it a bit pretentious for the simple reason that Amitabh Bachchan is not praja by any measure.
and okay,
I
but
mean,
the way he replied,
no, but
they have
that's what.
all the right to criticize him because in that way he said.
No, no, I understand, but to
And,
me that came across as completely contrived and unnecessary modesty.
अच्छा,
He is not praja. I'm just expressing my personal opinion. Anyway, that's
yeah,
not the important part of our conversation. To conclude, Gopal,
yeah. But another incident I remember in Breach Candy, when I was very sure he has recovered, he will definitely come back to films. Was
hmm,
when Kalyanji Anandji, released a CD or cassette of their foreign tour with Amitabh. It
right.
was released in Breach Candy only when he started walking around.
Yes, I
That time we
remember
were
that.
very sure that he has recovered and definitely is going to come and start working again after he recovers. But he
Yeah,
recovered very fast. I thought, after that he will at least stay in home for at least 1 year. It's not an easy that kind of serious injury,
right.
and he managed it in 2 or 3 months, which is very admirable.
Now it is, and he was probably driven at that point,
Mm.
being who he was.
Mm.
I mean, he was India's biggest star even 40 years ago.
Yes,
So I think maybe that gave him the kind of push that a lot of others may not feel.
there's no doubt he is a great survivor.
Indeed, indeed.